New tonight, a senior immigration officer involved in the detention of Chinese workers may have been placed on leave. The immigration minister is tight-lipped. Meanwhile, a former leader involved in finding a solution to the crisis in Haiti says it's still a work in progress. And spotting the signs of dehydration. Scorching summer heat means the chances are higher. Then in our news at 7:30, beating the heat. Find out tips to staying cool on a budget. Our news live at 7 starts right now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. We are learning about a senior immigration officer who may have been placed on leave following his involvement with the detention of Chinese workers. The incident leading to a row in the House of Assembly yesterday. We'll get to that in just a bit. But first, police are telling us that another man is dead tonight after reports of a shooting in the inner city. Police telling our news the victim was one of two men who was shot in the area of Hay and Market Street around 4 o'clock this afternoon. They say both were taken to hospital in a private vehicle. The other man is said to be in stable condition. Shortly after learning of that incident, police say they received reports of a second shooting in the area of Quarry Mission Road. They say the victim in this case was taken to hospital and is listed in stable condition. We are following these incidents. Be sure and stay tuned to ournews.bs for the latest, and Our News Bahamas on Facebook. And these recent shootings come on the heels of another investigation into the circumstances surrounding the death of a 29-year-old male resident of Pinewood Gardens around 8 o'clock last night. Chief Superintendent Michael Johnson.
The male was walking in this area when the occupants of a small silver Japanese vehicle pulled alongside him. One male exited that vehicle and opened fire on the victim, shooting him multiple times about the body. He succumbed on the scene.
Asked about whether any children were injured in the shooting, Johnson said,
as you can see, this is a close-knit community. There are kids outside as we speak, and persons are always traversing this street. And so when you have incidents like this, it's always concerning to the police that a stray bullet could end up hitting one of these kids. And so again, we appeal to fair-minded persons of this community to assist your police in this investigation.
All right, well, a man who potentially faced a lengthy sentence for a 2020 stabbing will instead serve probation. Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson sentenced 64-year-old Haddon Miller to time served and 1 year of probation after he pleaded guilty to causing grievous harm. Miller was initially charged with attempted murder, which carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. However, prosecutors dismissed the attempted murder charge as part of a plea deal. Miller stabbed Wilfred Pierre in the abdomen during a fight in Baintown on September 14, 2020. The fight started after Pierre refused to leave the area after being ordered to by Miller. And a day after that heated shouting match in the House of Assembly over an ongoing work permit saga, the immigration minister tight-lipped over reports of a senior immigration official being placed on leave after giving the order to round up Chinese nationals at British Colonial Hotel. Berthany McDermott has been following this.
Days after it was revealed that Immigration Minister Keith Bell superseded immigration officials, allowing Chinese workers to return to work at the British Colonial Hotel, our news understands the senior immigration official who gave the order has been placed on leave. We put the question to Immigration Minister Keith Bell today.
Thank you.
Are you able to say what those irregularities were?
On Tuesday, Bell admitted Chinese nationals working at the British Colonial Hotel in January were released from custody to return to work despite irregularities that prompted officers to detain them. He said it was determined that taking them to the detention center was unnecessary. Speaking to reporters today, Bell said he plans to put the matter to rest.
A series of questions have been asked of me in the House of Assembly. And it is on Wednesday, which is the question time, that I will appropriately answer all questions thoroughly, substantively, and put this thing to rest once and for all.
In response, Free National Movement leader Michael Pintard said the matter should not solely be addressed in a communication in Parliament.
We should have an opportunity back and forth to have a discussion, to put questions to him. this government is not minded to answer questions from the public. This is precisely why they attempted to muzzle me yesterday.
On Tuesday, Bell said the hotel has a heads of agreement that allows for the temporary importation of foreign laborers for the completion of the hotel.
It's absolute nonsense. Heads of agreement can outline the percentage of Bahamian versus foreign workers, but even then, you must go through the right process to apply for those workers to come in. We do not believe, based on what has been said to us by immigration officials, that these persons came in on a work permit. The minister should produce, in his presentation, he should produce evidence that they applied in advance of coming to the country.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
All right, former Prime Minister Perry Christie says Haiti is optimistic about a solution to the ongoing unrest there, despite the turmoil. It comes following his trip to the island nation as part of the CARICOM Eminent Persons Group tasked with finding a way forward for Haiti.
The business community was very upbeat, very strong, even though Haiti is going through an incredibly bad situation. They are very optimistic about what could happen. And I think at the end of the day, we will continue our meetings as early as tomorrow, where we have Zoom meetings with stakeholders in Haiti.
Christie is serving alongside former Jamaican Prime Minister Bruce Golding and former St. Lucian Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony. The group will liaise with officials from the United Nations, the United States, and Canada on the issue. Meanwhile, Christie says the goal is to move toward the democratization of Haiti.
In the meantime, we have to be very concerned about the violence, the gangs, the control that they have, the impact that they have, the kidnappings, and women who tell harrowing stories of being assaulted.
All right, now to the extreme heat that's got some residents finding themselves feeling dehydrated. But what are the signs that you should be looking out for, especially if you don't even feel thirsty? Well, family practitioner at Ralpha Health Center, Dr. Kalafo Colley, explains.
In the infant, less than 2, you look at their fontanelles, or we call it in the forehead, the fontanelle, you see if that's sunken. You look at the eyes, see if the eyes are dry or sunken. Sometimes you look in the mouth to see if the mouth is dry, if they're producing enough saliva. With infants, they could just be breathing rapidly, or the skin also looks dry, or the skin pinch test, you pull it up, the skin lightly, and if it goes back quickly, more than likely hydrated. If it slowly goes back, it could mean the person is dehydrated.
And Dr. Colley says the same goes for teenagers and the elderly, adding that paying attention to urine is also important, ensuring it isn't a deep brown or golden color.
If you're mildly dehydrated, you might just want water. If your skin is extremely dry, dry mouth, dry eyes, fatigue, tired, it could mean that it's a moderate to severe. And then severe, if you don't get fluids quickly enough, the person can be faint, pass out, and need to go to the hospital to be monitored.
All right, and speaking of the extreme heat, it's time now for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Kendina. Happy Thursday evening, everybody. We are still stuck with these warm temperatures, and it is warmer this evening than it was for the last couple of days. We are now in the upper 80s, 87 degrees outside our studios under partly cloudy skies. Your winds out of the east-southeast at 12 miles per hour, and even though we have that breeze out there, it's not taking much off the temperature. Your feel-like temperature is in the mid-90s. Temperatures around the islands right now, it's 86 in Freeport, 87 over in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, 88 in Allentown, Bimini, more 87, well, another 87 in Great Harbor Key, Nickel San Andros and Governor's Harbor, you guys sharing a pair of 86s there. Allentown, Bimini, you guys having some showers nearby. 86 in Central Bahamas, that's in the Kemps Bay area, 85 in Arthurstown, Cat Island, and in Georgetown. Coburn Town, San Salvador, 87, Deadman's Key, 86, and into the Southeast Bahamas. Mid-80s there with 85s in Duncantown, Ragged Island, Colonel Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, 87 in Abrahams Bay, Matthewtown, Inagua, 86, and our neighbors to the south, the Turks and Caicos Islands, you guys are 87 at this hour. Satellite radar composite, that tropical wave is well to the west of us. It's actually just west of Florida and the Florida Keys. Showers and thunderstorms associated with that. But we still have some residual moisture hanging out across the northwest Bahamas. Bimini, Andros, you got some showers and isolated thunderstorms earlier today. Most of that activity will continue to pull towards the east and away from us. But behind that, we have Saharan dust that's been invading us for the last 24 hours. That will continue through tomorrow and looks as though that will stay with us throughout the weekend. And of course, as we mentioned earlier in the week, we expect you to take necessary precautions because if you have any allergies, this could pose a problem for you if you plan on being on the outdoors. That's your first look at weather. Stick with us to look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come in our news, how persistent power outages are impacting the country's #1 industry. The Hotel and Tourism Association says consistent quality power is critical to its success. And this video shows the now demolished Melia Resort, scenes from today's implosion. Plus, the country's fight for removal from the European Union's blacklist now on the Senate floor. The Attorney General calling it an unfair cycle when our news returns. The country's bread and butter industry continues to feel the effects of load shedding and high electricity costs, especially in the Family Islands. Joshua Williams reports.
Along with the heat, the summer months have brought frequent load shedding, something that frustrates residents every year. And for the hotel industry, a constant supply of electricity, especially for those on the Family Islands, is important. Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association President Robert Sands.
I think the reality is that it is more an issue for our members in the Family Islands, where a number of properties may not have 100% standby capacities in their respective properties. So consistent, reliable electricity is also a critical part of tourism's success, particularly in our Family Islands.
There have been calls for residents in the country to tap into renewable energy sources. This, Sands says, is something hotels have already begun doing.
Many hotels have been doing that and have been gradually introducing aspects of their plan to solar and other forms of renewable energy.
While major resorts in New Providence are not affected by power outages, Sands says the #1 issue lies with the high cost.
In New Providence, the issue is slightly different because I think most of the larger hotels have the ability to have standby generation for an extended period of time and also for 100% of its property. I think the single dramatic impact has been cost, which we're hopefully within the next 6 months we'll see them beginning to decrease again.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, thanks a lot, Joshua. And still talking tourism, back in 2021, it was announced that Melia Resort would close its doors for 2 years for renovations costing millions of dollars. In a statement, executives at Bahamas said the fully renovated resort would be opened in spring of this year, and that has not happened. When asked for an update on the progress of the project, Senior Vice President for Bahamas, Robert Sands, had this to say.
I can confirm that it's in the process of being demolished as we speak.
All right, the country's push to be removed from the European Union's blacklist continues in the Senate today as two bills debated this morning expected to strengthen the country's financial services industry. Megan Shepard has more.
Attorney General Senator Ryan Pinder says when it comes to the European Union's financial blacklisting protocol, the goalpost is constantly changing, noting the financial services industry is highly competitive, one in which he says our competitors are always looking for an advantage.
It's an industry where we have the big behemoths to our east and across the pond who look to themselves be financial centers at the detriment of us, and to cause for what I call inequitable determinations, blacklists, and other opinions that they may have about us.
And as small island nations like ours continue to face the detrimental effects of climate change, Pinder adds these larger countries are the source of increasing natural disasters. Yet, they are also the ones that move to blacklist our country, impacting our ability to recover.
Madam President, we cannot recover and rebuild if the financial services penalties put on us by the European Union affects the basic tenets of reinsurance and insurance in this country.
Pinder says the time for change is now, calling this cycle unfair, and says the government will solicit the support of regional and global partners. As for getting the country removed from the EU's blacklist, he says changes are expected to come on stream before the EU's re-rating in November.
We will have a new and functional portal up and running by September for the reporting on an economic substance basis, Madam President. We will be in a position to demonstrate to the European Union, OECD, and others, Madam President, that we have the capability to enforce our laws.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepard.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as outrage now in India after two women were paraded naked in the streets. Plus, the fake COVID-19 cure leading to the conviction of an entire Florida family. And Sustainability First returns tonight with a look at how thrift shopping can help the environment. Find out the thrifty details when our news returns.
So you need a part for your car.
You need a water pump for 2014 Honda Accord. Don't worry, man. I can send you to my boy. You could be straight.
But his boy is in wimauto.com.
Hello?
You say you're looking for a water pump, right?
They made you question if you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, man, this could wait.
It did not. Luckily, wimauto.com lets you search for parts by year, make, and model.
Found it.
Plus, you can pay online for pickup or next weekday delivery.
I have a guide for that. Actually, a website.
Save time and shop with confidence on wimauto.com.
March on, Bahamas.
This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. A video showing two women being paraded naked by a mob in the northeastern state of Manipur has sparked outrage in India. The viral video, which made national headlines, shows two women being dragged and groped by a mob of men in Manipur, which has been hit by violent ethnic clashes recently. Police say they have opened a case of gang rape and arrested a man, adding that others will be held soon and no one guilty will be spared. Global experts say heat wave alerts have increased by 50% this year. Vice President of Global Public Safety at Everbridge, Brian Tulin, says there's also been an increase in both the length of heat waves and the geographic coverage compared to 2022. Tulin says the waves are expanding beyond their usual southern regions, moving further north and across the United States. One winning U.S. lottery ticket was sold for Wednesday night's Powerball jackpot of just over $1 billion. The winning ticket was bought in Los Angeles. However, it's unclear whether the winning ticket holder has claimed the prize. Winning the jackpot is a 1 in 292.2 million chance. And once the ticket is claimed, they have the option of receiving the full amount in an annuity paid over 30 years or taking a smaller cash option as a lump sum. 4 members of a Florida family were convicted Wednesday of selling a toxic industrial bleach as a fake COVID-19 cure through their online church. A federal jury in Miami found 65-year-old Mark Grennan and his 3 sons, all between the ages 29 and 37, guilty of conspiring to defraud the United States and deliver misbranded drugs. Now, authorities say what they were selling as a cure was chlorine dioxide. Now, the 4 men were sentenced to up to 5 years in prison, but one of his sons says he intends to appeal. And finally, Australia's Gold Coast says it is ready to step in to stage the 2026 Commonwealth Games after the state of Victoria pulled out. Mayor Tom Tate made the announcement a day after Victoria Premier Daniel Andrews said his state would pull out due to costs, claiming it had tripled. Commonwealth Games Federation struggled to find a host before Victoria stepped forward last April. All right, here at home, a local climate change specialist has been vocal about climate emergencies this summer, but she also does work on the everyday choices we make that can make a difference on our carbon footprint. Marlena Leonard explains in tonight's Sustainability First.
Bahamas First, putting sustainability first for our people and our environment. What's first for you and the planet comes first for us.
Margin Finlayson is a climate change specialist and co-founder of DAPS Bahamas, standing for Development, Advancement, Preservation, and Sustainability. One of DAPS's initiatives has been to bring back the culture of thrift shopping to Eleuthera in hopes of combating the demand for fast fashion.
The reason we do this is also because we want to make sure people have resources to things, because we know that there are people on the island with and people without. We also want to target fast fashion as a part of climate action, trying to limit the amount of ordering that happens. A lot of people order from Shein, and I know Shein has great sales, but it is an emitter of greenhouse gases when we consider the fact that clothes are being shipped from China. And to ship from China, it takes a lot of gas, a lot of fuel, a lot of things for clothes to come in. Fast fashion also is responsible for a lot of pollutants.
Beyond the pollutants involved in making them, Finlayson says the environment also suffers when the time comes to discard them.
They're being made, clothes and things are being made to be thrown away, because if they're thrown away, then you'll buy more of it, and it adds to this big consumerism. And more of the stuff that's thrown away only adds to landfills and only adds to causing leaching in the actual environment and polluting our water.
In another Sustainability First segment, we told you how the fashion industry is responsible for 20% of global wastewater, and when it comes to ocean water, the fashion industry plays a role in 35% of the ocean's microplastics. Finlayson also speaks about teaching people how to care for and extend the life of their items.
We want to look at is trying to help people understand how to use, how to maintain their clothes, how to make them last for longer periods of time, so they won't feel as compelled to go buy from Shein, buy from these other brands versus going in your grandmother's closet and making something last for another 50 years.
Reporting for Our News and reminding you to put sustainability first, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Still to come in Our News, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was July 20th. Then, in Our News at 7:30, we put our spotlight on the Marcos alert, as the police chief superintendent says most missing children are runaways. And looking for ways to keep your home cool this summer? Natalia Hall shares some must-haves and tips you don't want to miss when Our News returns. Welcome back to Our News. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was July 20th. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history, in 1968, International Air Bahamas made its inaugural flight from Nassau International Airport to Findel Airport in Luxembourg. Its formation was influenced by the Tourism Promotion Board during then Prime Minister Lyndon Pindling's administration. Air Bahamas' crew was international, including people from the Bahamas, the U.S., Luxembourg, and Sweden, to name a few. The airline was eventually sold to another air company in 1969 and continued its operations until 1982. Then in 1975, a New York Times article detailed efforts by the Bahamian government to protect marine resources from illegal fishing. At the time, the government enacted a law for the protection of breeding areas of lobsters. The law made it illegal to fish crustaceans in waters adjacent to the Bahamas without a permit. Many of the fishermen and boat owners at the time were Cuban refugees who had been fishing for years with only a local license. Others were international fishermen coming to hunt lobsters in international waters, some reacting violently to the ban and would defy the law using arms to prevent their boats and catches from being seized. And finally, in 2022, officials reported a massive oil spill in Exuma. 35,000 gallons of oil spilled, turning a once crystal blue water bay into a murky area. The spill prompting a visit from then-acting Prime Minister and area MP Chester Cooper and other officials. The spill happened around 4 o'clock that morning while a vessel was delivering fuel to BPL in the area of the Old Navy base in Georgetown. The contracted deliverers of the Mount Arabian Company discovered a leak during the discharging process, and it was said that they had deployed absorbent pads and contaminant buoys to quickly contain the area. All right, to watch that story again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us, the news at 7. Joining us now is Natalia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Natalia?
Yes, Ken. Well, missing or just a runaway, the police chief superintendent weighs in on missing persons cases and more on a proposed parole system. Here are your latest headlines.
Missing or just running away from home. New tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. The chief of the Criminal Investigation Unit is weighing in on recent missing persons cases. Also, the conditional release of offenders bill, all about second chances. The National Security Minister says you have to give them an opportunity. Plus, extreme heat exposure this summer begs the question, who's at risk? A family practitioner shares the answer. And later, how you can cut the cost of your power bill this summer. An AC technician explains how you can save and still beat the heat. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Doctors Hospital is reimagined. Welcome to Our News, and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. There have been many missing teens in recent weeks. On Monday, a missing person flyer was circulated for 14-year-old Stephanie Mackey. A Marcos alert was also sent in reference to Stephanie just before 8 p.m. on the same day. Now, police alerted the media that Stephanie had been found. The same happened with 18-year-old Ashton Sherman, who was also missing but was found 2 days later. Head of the Criminal Investigation Unit, Chief Superintendent Michael Johnson, was asked about these kinds of matters.
We appeal to our community, and their pictures are put on the billboard, and a number of those persons have been recovered. Many of them are not necessarily missing per se, but most of them are runaways, teens that just for whatever reason leave home. In most cases, the parents know that they are runaways, and so we would have to speak to those individuals to determine where they would have been if they were involved in any other activity.
All right, well, a proposed bill that has been in the works for 7 years, according to officials, may soon head to Parliament. The bill will focus on giving inmates a second chance in society. Our Joshua Williams has the details.
Giving second chances. That's what National Security Ministry officials says the conditional release of offenders bill is all about. At a town hall meeting last evening, the first of several set to be held this summer, residents were educated on the proposed bill, what it contains and the benefits it will have for both the incarcerated and general public. National Security Minister Wayne Munro says the legislation will provide the country with a chance to do things differently.
The individuals who happen to end up in the correctional facility for reasons that are varied and many end up before our courts. And in the past, the only solution people seem to have is lock them up so they can't come out. Well, they are coming out. The vast majority are coming out.
This vast majority accounts for 98% of inmates currently at the Bahamas Department of Corrections. Acting Commissioner at BDOC's Don Clare explains how the new system will work.
The parole board would place conditions on them. You can't hang with this one. You can't go this way. You can't drink. You can't smoke. You can't stay at your house after 6 o'clock in the night. These are conditions that may happen, right? And if you want your freedom, you will adhere to those requirements.
Clare says those chosen will also be employed.
We will place you in a job before you come out of the institution, which is called community industries. So the purpose is this. We're going to teach you about parole and also teach you about community industries.
And what about the opinion that inmates should be made to serve their sentence without leniency? Munro says people should remember an important biblical lesson.
I was in prison and you visited me. So be very clear about it. Christ himself engaged with the plight of prisoners.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
All right, thanks for that, Josh. Well, a court has ordered the return of over $80,000 to a businessman. Authorities seized $80,250 from Gregory Miller, the president of Apex Underground Utilities, after they allege he failed to declare that he was traveling with over $10,000. A magistrate discharged the case against Miller and ordered the return of the funds after a Customs and Border Protection officer failed to testify in the case. However, that order was put on hold after prosecutors filed an appeal against the magistrate's decision, but the appeal was withdrawn, clearing the way for the return of the money. Well, a man from Andrews was arrested yesterday for possession of an unlicensed firearm and ammunition. Officers from the Mobile Division, while acting on information, went to a home on Milton Street, where they conducted searches that led them to find a high-powered weapon and a quantity of ammunition. As a result, the 37-year-old resident of Fresh Creek was arrested and taken into custody. Investigations are continuing. With higher than usual temperatures lately, residents are being warned to stay hydrated and to keep cool. But who are the most susceptible to illnesses brought on by exposure to heat? Our Jamila Mizik fills us in.
CEO of Ralpha Health Center and family practitioner Dr. Kilafo Colley says when it comes to exposure to extreme heat, the general public is at great risk. However, parents should pay special attention to children,
who of course will be outside more, who more than likely won't be wearing sunscreen, and they will be in the sun for longer periods of time and playing.
He says the elderly is also at risk.
These persons lose fluids and electrolytes very quickly during the summertime. The humidity causes them to sweat, and they can end up becoming very severely dehydrated. And because of that, become confused, dizzy, fatigued, even to the point of passing out and requiring hospitalization for fluids and further care.
But there is another category of patients who should take heed.
Diabetics, definitely, their body is very sensitive to any change, so going outside in the heat can cause, again, them to lose a lot of fluid, electrolytes, and become hypoglycemic. They can just become dehydrated. Cancer patients, same thing. The immune system is challenged in some cases, and of course, any change in electrolytes from sweating and dehydration can cause the symptoms to worsen.
And if you fall into any of these categories, here's what Dr. Cawley says you should do.
Try to stay in a cool room with the fan or air conditioner on. I know it's a little expensive, but try to do that. Wear cotton clothes that can breathe or light clothing at home. And stay indoors as much as you can during the peak of the heat.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
All right, great report. Thanks, Jamila. Well, another hot day around the islands, but what type of temperatures can we expect as the weekend quickly approaches? Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with a first look at weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia, and welcome everybody for a quick check on conditions outside our studios and around the islands. 87 degrees, we'll call it warm, we'll call it humid, we'll call it muggy. It is absolutely warm on the outside. East-southeast winds at 12 miles per hour, and your field slight temperature hanging out in the mid-90s, so it's very, very uncomfortable on the outside. Satellite and radar composite tropical wave that was affecting us yesterday, and actually the southeast Bahamas the day before, is now west of the Florida coast. Some residual moisture hanging back across the northwest Bahamas, showers and thunderstorms across Grand Bahama, the Bimini, as well as the Abaco area earlier today. Most of the activity is now to the west of Andros. All of that will continue to track towards the west as the system continues to pull away from us. But Saharan dust is going to be invading our area for the next couple of days, so it's going to be very hot out there. So make sure you dress accordingly. That's a quick check on conditions around the island. Stick with us. A look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, author, activist, and historian, the late Dr. Gail Saunders is remembered. Plus, a major resort giving back to some of the most vulnerable among us. We'll tell you all about it. And later, are you tired of getting high power bills in the mail during the summer? An AC technician is sharing how you can conserve energy and still beat the heat when Our News continues.
Doctors Hospital is reimagined primary care. We have invested to improve our health system, ensuring that accessible, affordable, world-class clinical care is closer to you. Your relationship with a primary care provider shapes the foundation of your overall health. Our new, modern primary care facilities are where critical diagnosis and true personalized treatment begin. With locations across New Providence, Grand Bahama, and Exuma, we invite you to experience the Doctors Hospital difference. Book your next appointment at clinics.doctorshos.com.
The Lakaya Service Company giving an update on repairs to the Casuarina Bridge recently. You may remember that the bridge was severely impacted by Hurricane Dorian's high winds and flooding back in September of 2019. DevCo revealed that during construction, it was determined that the bridge required different methods for repairs that caused changes to the scope of work that increased the cost to $2.8 million. DevCo noted that the work is still ongoing and good progress has been made. And while the company did not give an official completion date in this recent update, they noted that traffic management measures are in place to maintain public safety. Mariners are also reminded to slow down and exercise extreme caution when approaching the area. Now, the CEO says she knows that these critical repairs can result in inconveniences, but the public's continued patience is greatly appreciated. Well, politicians, past and present, along with senior law enforcement officers, signing the Book of Condolences for historian, activist, and author, the late Gail Saunders. Now, Saunders, who was 79, established the Bahamian National Archives and was the director from 1971 to 2004. She also served as president of the Bahamas Historical Society from 1989 to 1999.
She cannot be replaced. She has made her contribution to her country. I'm very pleased and proud to know that I was a friend.
One need only say, forever and forever, she will probably be the greatest historian our country has produced.
Her work is a library of information that will ensure that she lives on.
Now, she was a scholar in residence at the University of Bahamas. Saunders was married to the late attorney Dr. Winston Saunders. Other parliamentarians also lined up to speak of the mark Dr. Saunders left behind.
As I said to her family, she has gone to the grave, an empty vessel. I thank God for her. I am happy I am where I am today because of Dr. Gail Saunders. And of course, when you see me get up in the House and speak, it is because that lady taught me how to conduct research.
She has helped to shape the worldview that many persons have of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. She was fiercely loyal to this country, and she was a powerful intellectual.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, giving back to those who need it most. How Omega Resorts donation is expected to help the Bahamas Association for the Physically Disabled.
Jonquel Jones and the Liberty drop a game to Dallas, and a minor league prospect puts his team on his back to win a wild one in the mountains. Hold tight, our sports is coming right up.
Plus, did you know it's more cost-effective to use your air conditioning unit at night? That's according to an AC technician who explains how you can beat the heat when our news returns.
This is our news. Welcome back. A much-needed donation to the Bahamas Association for the Physically Disabled today as the center receives $60,000 from the Bahamas Resort Foundation. Association President Charlotte Albury says the funds will go a long way.
It will sustain the children daily because we give them 2 hot meals a day. So that is an ongoing thing. Again, everything we have to raise money for. We get $15,000 from government. So you can imagine that does not go very far. It costs $500 a month to sponsor the child in order to get what we're giving them. We also have some chairs that are needed for some of the children, and they will have to be fitted individually. So some of the money will go towards that.
The funds came from the proceeds of the Resorts Gulf Invitational held recently. Bahamas Senior Vice President Robert Sands says it's important to give back and appeal to corporate Bahamas to get more involved.
We feel that it's very important to give back to a community that has also been very good to us as a company. And so we selected as one of our pivotal donations this year to support the Bahamas Association for the Physically Disabled. The needs here are so great. And so I am also appealing to the general public and to the Bahamas at large to join.
Today's sports update is sponsored by Michelob Ultra, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
Jonquil Jones and the Liberty fall to the Dallas Wings, and an up-and-coming baseball star led his team to a comeback win. Here's Tej Adderley with a check on sports. Tej?
Thanks, Natalia. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Our Sports. I'm Tej Adderley. Jonquil Jones and the Liberty took the floor last night against the Dallas Wings. Unfortunately for them, things did not go their way. Jonquil Jones and the New York Liberty fell to the Dallas Wings last night, 98-88. JJ had 11 points and 9 rebounds, while Brianna Stewart led the Liberty with 25 points and 6 rebounds. Arike Agomawale led the Wings with 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Liberty's next game will be against the Washington Mystics tomorrow. That was a tough loss for JJ and the Liberty, but they'll have a chance to bounce back tomorrow against the Washington Mystics. Moving on to some baseball, BJ Murray did the heavy lifting to help his team secure the win last night. BJ Murray had a perfect game last night to help his Tennessee Smokies eke out a 9-8 victory over the Mississippi Braves. The Chicago Cubs prospect went 3 for 3 with 3 RBI and a home run in the 5th to help the Smokies rally to within 2 runs of the Braves. The Smokies would win in the 9th when Owen Casey walked with the bases loaded. That was a wild game, and they needed every single one of his hits to win. The Babe Ruth Caribbean Tournament began today, and there are games going on right now if you want to see the best youth baseball players in the region. That's all for sports today. I'm Tej Adderley.
Still ahead on our news tonight, extreme heat has us all trying to stay cool at home, but an AC technician explaining how you can preserve electricity while using your air conditioning units this summer. And while you try to beat the heat, Greg is back with your midweek weather planner when our news continues.
Welcome back to our news. Another hot day in the capital, but there are some ways you can stay cool on a budget. We have that story coming up right after Greg, who's back in the Weather Center with your extended forecast. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Italia, and welcome back, everybody, for our final check at weather. We still have some Saharan dust that's been invading the islands, and that's going to continue through the weekend and into early next week. Tropical wave that was affecting us is now in the Gulf of Mexico. Most of the moisture is pulling away from us, but we still have some residual moisture across the northwest Bahamas. So a couple isolated showers and thunderstorms expected across those areas. But eventually things will dry out as this ridge of high pressure at the surface and the Saharan dust invades us. That's going to dry us out, and we will look for less in terms of any shower activity. But boy, it's going to get hot. So make sure if you plan on doing anything on the outdoors, take frequent breaks, dress accordingly, and drink lots of liquids. In the tropics, we are still watching dawn. Last advisory has winds up to 50 miles per hour. The system will continue to pull towards the northwest, really not posing a problem to anybody out there in the open Atlantic. Eventually should move into the cooler waters by the early part of next week and become a remnant low. National Hurricane Center also watching an area down just off the Cape Verde Islands or the Cabo Verde Islands. That is giving it about a 20% chance for formation. But we will continue to watch that as we start to look towards the African coast during this time of the year for any systems. Future forecast showing just some residual moisture across the northwest Bahamas tonight, and through Friday we expect a couple isolated showers still left over, but by Saturday things really dry out and maybe 1 or 2 spotty showers expected in your forecast. Beaching and boating forecast for the northwest Bahamas tonight to tomorrow. Small craft caution. Well, use some caution. The winds are going to be east to southeast at around 15 knots. They will fall off 10 to 15 by tomorrow. Seas running 3 to 5 feet. High tide will be at 10:37 tonight. For the southeast and central Bahamas, caution fly for you down there as well. East to southeast winds at 15 to 20 knots. They will be gusting at times. Seas running 4 to 7 feet over open waters. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, things dry out rather nicely, but those temperatures will be in the mid to low 90s, and of course heat indices will be in the triple digits, and we do not expect anything in terms of any precipitation. The Saharan dust will be with us, so if you have allergies, make sure you protect yourself, and if you plan on doing anything on the outdoors, a mask is suggested. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
Thanks, Greg. Well, temperatures are continuing to heat up throughout the islands as we dive deep into the summer months. Some temperatures reaching up to 90 degrees or more, which has caused residents to use their air conditioning units more than usual. In light of this, I spoke with a Grand Bahamian air conditioning technician who is sharing how you can stay cool this summer and save.
These are the filters. You gotta make sure they're clean. They slide right in and slide right out, and then you slide them right back in.
Air conditioner technician Didier Roll says most times when people have issues with their air conditioning unit, they may think that their AC needs gassing up, but he says that's not always the case, as maintaining the unit and ensuring that the filters are clean is key. Roll says your unit should have a deep cleaning once a year and service once every quarter.
So I recommend that you try to set your temperature to a certain temperature, not really cold where you need blanket, but where it's comfortable. And that's give the air conditioning time to shut off, and you don't have to run it as much.
The technician says there are energy-efficient air conditioning units with inverters that use less electricity, and in his opinion, mini-split units are more beneficial.
If you have one central air conditioning, you have to cool down the whole area, which means you might have people occupied in the front room or the kitchen or the restroom. So with a split, you isolate the area. So I might best be in my bedroom. So all night, I don't have to run the front room or the kitchen because no one is in that area. So it's less for my electricity bill.
And his advice is to turn on your AC more at night rather than in the day.
It isn't working as hard as one. And in the nighttime, it's not a lot of movement, and you're just relaxing and stuff and everything. So and then when you run it all through the night, or like now, when I run my home, then mostly through the morning time and part of the day, the house stay cool.
But he says he knows it's hot, so if you must use your unit,
set it to 25 or 26 on the mini split. So which where is not so cool, but it keeps the house comfortable, where you don't have to use as much electricity to keep the house to that temperature which you want it to.
see all of our summer stories, you can, of course, visit ournews.bs. And with that, we thank you for joining us for Our News Tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.